If you think no one can steal your entire life with nothing more than a single piece of paper, my story may change your mind. My name is Ethan Carter. 12 years ago, I woke up on what should have been an ordinary morning, only to discover that, somehow, I had become a criminal. Not because I had broken the law, but because someone else had been living my life. They used my name, my social security number, my signature. They borrowed millions of dollars, opened companies, laundered money, committed tax fraud, and built an entire life using my identity. The day FBI agents knocked on my front door, I honestly thought they had the wrong address. That belief lasted only a few seconds. Then one of the agents placed a file, nearly 4 inches thick, on the table in front of me. The first page showed my photograph, my name, my signature, and underneath it, primary suspect. I told them, I've never owned a company. I've never applied for those loans. I've never signed any of these documents. One of the agents looked me straight in the eye. Mr. Carter, every piece of evidence says otherwise. At that moment, I believed my identity had been stolen by a sophisticated criminal organization. I was wrong. The people who stole my life weren't strangers. They were the people I trusted more than anyone else. My own family. By the time I finally uncovered the truth, more than 10 years had already disappeared. My career had been destroyed. My reputation was gone. My future had nearly been erased. And the most painful part wasn't discovering who betrayed me. It was realizing they had planned everything from the very beginning. This is my story. After the interrogation room door closed behind me, I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly for nearly 2 hours. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. My coworkers, my boss, even an attorney my company had recommended. I didn't answer a single call because there was only one question running through my mind. Who could possibly know everything about me? My full name, my date of birth, my social security number, a copy of my birth certificate, my driver's license, even my signature. Those weren't things a complete stranger could simply get their hands on. I eventually pulled over at a small park. It was the same place where my father had taken me fishing 12 years earlier. He used to tell me, Ethan, in this world, your family is the only group of people you can trust completely. For years, I believed every word. Looking back now, that may have been the biggest mistake of my life. I grew up in a family of 4. My father, Richard Carter, was a man who always wanted the world to believe he was successful. My mother, Linda Carter, was kind and quiet. She never questioned a single decision my father made. Then there was my older brother, Ryan, 4 years older than me. Growing up, Ryan was the pride of the family. His grades were average, but he had an incredible gift for talking to people. He could walk into any room and make everyone like him. My father would pat him on the shoulder and proudly say, Ryan was born to be a leader. As for me, I was the quiet one. The kid who buried himself in books, the one who always had a plan. My father used to tell me, you're smart, but you'll never be a leader. Back then, I just smiled. I never felt jealous. I truly believed everyone had their own path in life. After graduating from college, I landed a job at an accounting firm. The paycheck wasn't impressive, but it was steady. I rented my first apartment, bought my first used car, and slowly built my credit. Every bill, every payment, I made on time. I honestly believed that if you lived with integrity, life would eventually reward you for it. Ryan's life followed a very different path. Over the next 8 years, he jumped from one business venture to another. Real estate, cryptocurrency, a restaurant investment, then a trucking company. Every new idea started with huge promises, and every single one ended in debt. Whenever Ryan failed, my parents rushed in to save him. One time, my father emptied almost all of his retirement savings just to pay off Ryan's debts. My mother even sold her wedding jewelry to give him another chance. No one ever blamed Ryan. My father would simply shrug and say, every successful man fails. If you want to make it big, you have to take risks. As for me, I never asked my parents for a single dollar. Even when I bought my first condo, I saved every penny for the down payment myself. My father looked over the purchase agreement. He nodded once. No congratulations, no words of pride. Instead, he asked, "You still have all your personal documents, right? Your birth certificate, your social security card, everything?" "Yeah, I still have all of it." He smiled. "Good. Make sure you never lose them." At the time, I had no idea why he was so interested in those documents. It wasn't because he wanted to protect me. It was because the plan had already begun. 3 months later, my father called me out of the blue. "Ethan, I need a favor." It was the very first time he asked me to bring all of my personal documents back to the house. And that was the day my life started down a road there would be no coming back from. 3 months later, my father called. His voice was calm. "Ethan, come by the house this weekend. I need a small favor." I didn't think twice. My family rarely asked me for anything, and whenever they did, I was always willing to help. That Saturday afternoon, I drove to my parents' house. Ryan was there too. One of his trucking businesses had just collapsed. The atmosphere felt heavy, but everyone pretended everything was perfectly normal. After dinner, my father pulled a stack of documents from his briefcase and slid them across the table. "Ethan, these are just a few verification forms. The bank needs some additional paperwork." I frowned. "Why do they need me?" My father smiled. "Ryan's starting another company. We just need to verify a family address and a few personal details. There aren't any loans. There are no financial obligations. It's nothing but routine paperwork." Ryan laughed. "You know me, little brother. If I wasn't in a tight spot, I wouldn't be asking." I picked up the documents. They were packed with legal language, page after page. I started reading. Then my father gently rested his hand on my shoulder. "You don't trust your own father?" I froze. Those words hit harder than they should have. For a moment, I felt guilty just for hesitating. So I set the papers down, and I signed them. Every single page. Without reading. Without asking another question. Because the man sitting across from me was my father. Before I left, my mother walked over carrying a small box. Inside were a few old documents. She smiled. "I found a copy of your birth certificate. I kept it here in case you ever lost yours. Go ahead and take it with you." I thanked her, completely unaware that it was no longer the only copy in existence. The months that followed felt completely normal. I received a raise. I was assigned one of the firm's biggest clients. I started saving money for my first condo. Everything finally seemed to be falling into place. Then one morning my phone rang. It was the bank. "Good morning, Mr. Ethan Carter. We're calling about your overdue loan payment." I frowned. There has to be a mistake. "I don't have any loans." There was a brief silence. Then the representative slowly read the loan number, the funding date, the outstanding balance. Every detail was under my name. A chill ran through my body. I never signed that loan agreement. "Sir, our records include your signature, a copy of your driver's license, your social security number, and your identity verification photo." I tightened my grip on the phone. That was impossible. That same afternoon, I drove straight to the bank. The branch manager escorted me into a private office. He placed a file on the table and turned to the final page. "Can you confirm this isn't your signature?" I stared at it. It was my signature. Every stroke. Every curve. It looked so perfect that even I would have believed it at first glance. But I knew the truth. I had never signed that document. I can say this with absolute certainty. It's a forgery. The manager nodded. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out another stack of files. He looked at me with genuine sympathy. "Mr. Carter, this isn't the only account. There are 23 lines of credit, 4 business loans, 11 credit cards, and 2 limited liability companies. Every single one is registered under your name." The blood drained from my face. I could barely force the words out. "Who could have done something like this?" The manager answered quietly. "Only someone with complete access to your personal information. Your identification, your legal documents, even your signature." I walked out of the bank completely numb. The entire drive home, one memory kept replaying in my mind. That night, my father sliding those papers across the table, looking me in the eyes, and asking, "You don't trust your own father?" For the first time, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. Maybe this wasn't a random case of identity theft. Maybe it had been planned for years, and the only people who had everything they needed to pull it off were my own family. That night, I didn't go back to my apartment. Instead, I drove straight to my parents' house. The entire drive, I kept telling myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe my father had been deceived. Maybe Ryan had done something behind everyone's back. Maybe this was all one terrible misunderstanding. I needed to hear the truth from them. It was almost 9 o'clock. The lights in the living room were still on. My father answered the door. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised. He simply said, "You're here." I walked inside without saying hello. Then I dropped the bank files onto the coffee table. "I want to know who opened these loans." My father glanced at the paperwork, then calmly pushed it aside. "Sit down first. I didn't come here for tea. You're getting worked up. I just want an answer." At that moment, Ryan walked downstairs. The second he saw the files, he let out a quiet sigh. "So, you finally know." Those 4 words stopped my heart. "You knew?" Ryan pulled out a chair and sat across from me. "Yeah, I knew, from the very beginning." I slowly turned toward my father. He said nothing. My mother lowered her head. No one denied it. No one looked surprised. And in that instant, he understood. They weren't victims. They were the people who had protected the same secret for more than a decade. Why? It was the only question I could ask. Ryan answered quietly. "I was just trying to save my company. No bank would lend me money. My credit was ruined. But yours? Your credit was perfect. I only needed to use your name for a few months. I was going to pay everything back. And then everything would have gone back to normal." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. "A few months? It's been over 10 years. Ryan had no answer. Finally, my father spoke. "Families help each other." I stared straight into his eyes. "Help each other? You used my name. You forged my signature. You stole my social security number. You opened companies. You borrowed millions of dollars in my name. And you call that helping?" My father slammed his fist onto the table. "Watch your tone. If your mother and I hadn't raised you, you wouldn't have any of this." I stood there, speechless. It was the first time my father had used everything he'd ever done for me to justify a crime. My mother slowly walked over and reached for my hand. "If you go to the police, this family will fall apart. Ryan has a wife. He has 2 little children. Your father isn't young anymore. Please, don't do this." I gently pulled my hand away. My voice cracked. "What about me? When the FBI came after me, who thought about me? When I lost my job, who cared about me? If I end up in prison tomorrow, will any of you come visit me?" No one answered. The room fell completely silent. I leaned over, opened the files, and turned the pages one by one. Every contract carried the same signature, my signature. I looked at Ryan. "Did you forge it?" He shook his head. "No. I wouldn't even know how." "Then who did?" Ryan slowly turned toward our father. My father remained silent. He didn't have to say a single word. I already knew. Suddenly, a memory came rushing back. When I was a teenager, my father used to teach me how to sign my name. He always said, "Your signature should stay consistent. Never change it. You'll need it someday when you sign important contracts." Back then, I thought it was fatherly advice. Now, I finally understood. No one in the world knew my signature better than he did. I picked up the files and headed for the door. My father called after me. "Where are you going?" "To my lawyer." Ryan jumped to his feet. "Are you out of your mind? If you report us, I'll lose everything." I turned around and looked him straight in the eyes. "No. The person who destroyed your life isn't me. It was you. The day you decided to steal mine." I walked out of the house. No one followed me. No one apologized. No one asked me to stay. That night, I didn't just lose my family. I lost the last piece of faith I still had, that people who share your blood would never betray you. Just as I reached my car, my phone buzzed. It was the FBI agent. I answered. He said only one sentence. Mr. Carter? We just executed a search warrant at an office connected to your case. And we found something that changes everything. My heart tightened. At that moment, I knew the real nightmare had only just begun. The next morning, I arrived at the FBI field office. Special Agent Daniel Morris was already waiting for me. He placed a plain white evidence box on the table. Mr. Carter, we've just seized all the records from the offices of Carter Logistics. I've never even heard of that company, but according to the paperwork, you're the owner. I let out a bitter laugh. Another company? Registered under my name. Daniel opened the box. Inside were dozens of files. Business loan agreements, tax records, bank statements, minutes from shareholder meetings. Every single document carried the name Ethan Carter. I flipped through the pages. Then a photograph slipped onto the table. It showed Ryan shaking hands with a man in a tailored suit. Behind them hung a large banner. Grand opening, Carter Logistics. The date on that photo stopped me cold. It was the exact same day I was attending new hire training at my old accounting firm. I wasn't even in the city. Why is this photo important? Daniel turned it over. Written on the back were 4 words. CAO, Ethan Carter. But the man standing on that stage was Ryan. Daniel looked at me. You know what the strangest part is? Every employee we interviewed thought Ryan owned the company. Not a single one of them had ever met Ethan Carter. So, they used my name, but Ryan ran everything? Daniel nodded. Exactly. You were never the owner. You were just a name on paper, a shield. I sat there, unable to speak. For 12 years, another man had been living under my identity. Daniel reached for another envelope. This time, it contained recovered emails. He handed me a tablet. You should read this one yourself. I looked at the screen. Don't use Ryan's name anymore. His credit is destroyed. Move everything into Ethan's name. He never checks his credit reports anyway. The sender, Ryan. The recipient, my father. I scrolled down. Another email. I got a copy of Ethan's social security card. You handle the rest. My hands began to shake. I couldn't keep reading. Daniel spoke quietly. We also recovered an audio recording. It came from the company's accountant. He pressed play. Ryan's voice filled the room. Don't worry. If anything goes wrong, Ethan will take the fall. On paper, he's the owner. A moment later, I heard my father's voice. Exactly. Don't let him find out. He trusts this family completely. Just leave everything the way it is. Once the debts are paid, we'll dissolve the company. The room fell completely silent. I don't know how long I sat there without moving. The hardest part wasn't realizing they had committed crimes. It was realizing they had planned every step, every decision, every year. They had built the entire scheme on my trust. Daniel turned off the recording. Mr. Carter, with this evidence, we can indict Ryan. And your father. I looked up. What about my mother? Daniel stayed quiet for a few seconds. We don't have enough evidence yet. It appears she knew what was happening, but we haven't been able to prove she actively participated. I slowly closed my eyes. For the first time, I felt a small spark of hope. Maybe there was still a chance my mother hadn't crossed that line. Then Daniel reached for one final envelope. This arrived from the Social Security Administration just this morning. He slid it across the table. It's an application for a replacement Social Security card. I opened the file. The signature wasn't Ryan's. It wasn't my father's. It was Linda Carter, my mother. Beneath her signature was a note from the caseworker. Mother reported the original card as lost and requested an expedited replacement. I froze. My mother hadn't simply known. She had personally handed them the final missing piece they needed to steal my life. Tears rolled down my face. Not because I had lost money, not because I had lost my reputation, but because, in that moment, I finally understood. During the scheme that lasted more than a decade, there hadn't been a single innocent person in my family. Daniel quietly pushed another file toward me. Mr. Carter, this afternoon, the federal grand jury will meet. And before they decide whether to return an indictment, there's one thing only you can do. I looked up. What is it? Daniel met my eyes. We want you to wear a wire and go back to your family. We need them to confess. 3 weeks later, the federal grand jury returned an indictment. Ryan Carter was charged with multiple federal crimes: conspiracy to commit financial fraud, identity theft, forgery, bank fraud, tax evasion. My father, Richard Carter, was indicted as well. He was identified as the mastermind, the organizer, the man who orchestrated the entire scheme to use my identity for more than a decade. As for my mother, Linda Carter, she denied everything at first, until the recordings and the FBI's evidence were presented in court. She quietly lowered her head and never said another word. The trial lasted nearly 2 months. I sat in the witness section. For the first time, I looked at my family from across the courtroom. They were no longer my father, my mother, my brother. They were simply 3 criminal defendants. Ryan's attorney tried to convince the jury. This is nothing more than a family dispute. It shouldn't be treated as a criminal case. The prosecutor responded with a single sentence. The moment someone steals another person's identity, it stops being a family matter. It becomes a crime. The courtroom fell completely silent on sentencing day. Ryan was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. My father received 15 years. My mother was sentenced to 3 years of federal probation, along with substantial financial restitution. She avoided prison because she chose to cooperate with investigators during the final stage of the case. As people slowly left the courtroom, my mother called my name. Ethan. I stopped walking. She slowly came toward me. Her hair had turned almost completely gray. Her eyes were red from crying. Her voice trembled. I know. I'm sorry will never be enough, but I still need to say it. I'm sorry. I looked at her for a long moment. She was the mother who used to hold me whenever I was sick, the woman who stayed awake all night when I was just a little boy. But she was also the woman who signed the document that destroyed my life. I gave her a small nod. I forgive you. She broke down in tears. Before she could say another word, I quietly continued. Forgiveness doesn't mean it never happened. I won't spend the rest of my life hating you. But I can't go back to the way things used to be. She slowly closed her eyes, then nodded. Maybe, for the first time in years, she had finally accepted the truth. 1 year later, I moved to another city and started over. Not to run away from my past, but to finally live a life that truly belonged to me. I joined an organization that helps victims of identity theft. Every week, I meet people who lost their jobs, lost their savings, lost their families, simply because someone chose to exploit their trust. Every time I tell my story, it isn't to reopen old wounds. It's to remind them that your identity isn't just a name on a piece of paper, it's your entire life. Someone once asked me, if you could go back, would you still trust your family? I smiled. Then I answered, I would. But I would never again give someone my trust, without responsibility and accountability. Because family is never an excuse to abandon honesty, and love should never become a justification for betrayal. Thank you for staying with Veritale until the very end of this story. If today's story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another family betrayal story. Every story leaves a lesson. Every lesson has the power to change a life. This is Veritale.